going on? It's Steve. I just wanted to review with you the 8 tips I'd recommend in order to not overpay for your next property. These are the exact tips I'm going to be using to buy my next property, hopefully this spring. No, actually not spring. Hopefully this summer or fall. So the first one is you want to get pre-qualified, and you're going to get pre-qualified for a set amount of money. So let's just say it's 300K. If you're pre-qualified for 300K, you only want to look at homes likely in the range, I would say in the ballpark, 250 to 300. It might be some advice to look at stuff around the 320 range, but honestly, I like to look at what I can afford. So I'm going to look in the ballpark of 250 to 300 if that was my pre-qual amount. And I also recommend looking daily at the new listings in the set areas you're looking for, just to get a feel for the market, get a feel for the styles of homes that are being priced that way. And you can also see if the homes go under contract very quickly. That means they're priced competitively with multiple offers. Number 2 is have set criteria you are looking for. And this could be certain zip codes you're looking to invest in or buy your next property in. This could be if you're looking for value adds, such as cosmetics, paint, flooring, kitchen cabinets, small fixes in the bathroom like vanity, painting tiles, stuff like that. If you want cosmetic repairs, that'll increase the value over time as well. Or if a property is under rented, here in the Worcester area, you will see a ton, probably 90% of properties that are listed for sale. Longtime owners have had tenants in place for 10, 15, 20 years, and they do not raise the rent over time because they're comfortable with them paying. And they might be paying, honestly, $850 for a 2-bed, even $900 for a 3-bed property that they've rented for years and years and years. They're tenants at wills with the verbal agreement, but they did not want to increase the rent. That's a huge opportunity for value add if you are looking to take over the building, just because rents in the area, are much, much higher if you have the style of unit. It's very hard to find affordable properties to move into for tenants. And so market rent could be anywhere from 12 on the low end, probably up to 1,400, depending on the area of Worcester you're looking at for a 3-bed. That's a huge opportunity for value add if you are willing to take on the property. It's in good condition. You could also fix the cosmetics over time, get the market rents up, and you will see a huge bump in your cash flow. Next, I would recommend do not overpay for the property. Do not overpay for the property just because you want the property. The asking price is just a relative number. That's not anything set in stone. But sometimes properties are priced competitively where you have to overpay based on the asking price. I've done that before. I do not regret it because when you look at the mortgage, it's not a major difference between a payment on 405 and 410, even 415 or 420. It's not a big deal if you are very confident in your numbers that over time there's a great chance for appreciation, or you have an opportunity for value add, such as increasing the rents. So don't worry about that if you are looking to invest in the property over time. Don't worry about the asking price. Look at the recent sales. Look at what's going under contract, and that'll give you a very good indicator of where the market is, not the asking price the seller is asking. Next, number 3 is a general rule of thumb, is the 1% rule. In some areas, this is very hard to achieve. It's getting harder in the Worcester area to do this. In the Boston area, it is almost impossible. That just means if you buy a building, let's say it's 300K, 3 units, $1,000 a unit, you're looking at the 1% rule. The rents are 1% of the purchase price. That's 3K on 300K. Number 4, I like to look at a great neighborhood in order to invest in. I'm very big on the tenant class. And if your tenant class is strong, you will have less vacancy. You'll have not much to do on a turnover, maybe paint, maybe flooring, things like that, just minor fixes if you do have a strong tenant class and they take care of your property. I like to invest in a tenant class where I want to live. Personally, I don't want to invest in a place with higher crime, things like that. That's not what I want to invest in. I don't recommend you investing in that unless you're comfortable with it. But I like a strong tenant class. I like to look at, I would say, at least B areas. That strong tenant class where the median income is higher, the average home price is higher. You're not in a set of a lot of multifamily properties. And also a good area gives me confidence that the property will appreciate over time. In general, a property should appreciate 2 to 3%. And this really only matters one or 2 ways. If you're looking to refinance down the road, you need to hit a strong area with appreciation, or you need to buy under market in order to increase the equity in the property. So let's say you buy it at 200. If you want to refinance, either when it hits 250 or you force the value at 250, it means you bought it for 200, it's worth 250. You put in the repairs, you get an appraisal, it's worth 250, or you bought it for 200 and over time experience crazy appreciation, do light repairs, and it's still worth $250. That's a lot more rare, but at the same time, it's possible. If you buy in an area that's up and coming, or when the market's slightly down, it's definitely easier to gain that equity when you buy a property that is under market value and needs the repairs. Just because folks who sell the property typically want to sell move-in ready, maximize their profit. So you can find the properties on the MLS that are slightly either under rented, they have cosmetic repairs, and you see the comparable sales going in the area. You will absolutely see a better deal when you're looking at a property that needs that work in order to increase the value over time than something that's exactly move-in ready if you're looking to build the equity in the property. Next is don't look at properties that are too large or too little per unit. Now this applies to multifamily property. It's common to see in the Worcester area, you have a large 3-bed unit and they will convert one of the living rooms into a bedroom and they'll call it a 4-bed. That is not ideal. It is still a 3-bed plus a 1, which could be considered a 4-bed, but also you want to think of the tenant class that will want 4 beds or 3 beds plus a large living room. Another one is if you have a building, typically you only see this in 4 families where you might have an attic unit that's a 1-bedroom. There's typically a smaller renter class for a 1-bed. You don't get as much rent, but it's also something to consider. You want something that is mostly likely going to get your best bang for your buck. That's typically either going to be 3-bed, 3-bed, 1-bath units or 2-bed, 1-bath units. Always something to consider. You don't want something too big or too small for your target rental class. Next is you want to take a look at the recent sales on the property and also know the taxes and a quote for the insurance on the property. This is going to help you run your PITI numbers or your monthly mortgage payment. Just an example here, let's say the property's $300K. You will be paying a mortgage on that. In addition to the mortgage, you're going to be paying the taxes and you're going to be paying the insurance. And if you're less than 25% down or 20% down conventional, you're going to be paying PMI for the life of the loan. If it's FHA, you can refinance. This is something I'm going to be doing. But anyways, you're going to be paying that monthly payment. That monthly payment is going to be a set number every month, typically with a 30-year fixed. How does that look? I want to compare that number into what my monthly rents are going to be. So if my monthly rents are, let's say, $3,000, and I'm house hacking and my monthly payment's $2,700, I want to look at my numbers as well once I move out of the property. Because once I move out of the property, I'm going to be receiving more money for the unit I'm living in now. And you also want to run your numbers like that. You don't want to overpay by looking at sales at the property and just being overwhelmed by seeing if the property values are increasing. That's going to stop you from investing, just because if you're renting, it's going to be a better option to invest long term than sit on the sidelines for too long. Because anything could happen in the market. No one could predict it directly, but it's also good to get your foot in the door, at least start taking a look at properties just to get a feel for the market and where it's going. And what are you paying for the condition of the property? Now, number 7, the asking price from a sale on a property. It's either determined by either the listing agent's recommendation or the seller. So that price, if the owner has lived there, let's say 25 years, they might be asking way too much for the property. And the listing agent said it was okay to start that, but they probably warned him that it's going to be overpriced. So if the property's $400 and the seller wants $400 and you personally think the property's worth $375, it's okay to put that offer in at $375. If you take a look at what else is on the market and it's comparable in the terms of, $350, $375, $380, and it's a far stretch from $400. So you're not really insulting the seller if you put an offer in at $375, because it's your job as the buyer and with your buyer's agent to get you the best deal possible. You can't worry about what the seller thinks or reacts to when you put an offer in, because that's what you value the property at. It's not what the seller wants, unfortunately, because if that was the case, the seller would ask $600K for their property and they would get it. But it's what the market bears in regards to what similar homes are selling for in the situation. And we also can't control what happens at the inspection. We can't control how they react if we do a certain list on repairs or we ask for a credit at closing, but we want to do what's in our best interest when we're buying the property. I know I'm going to be doing this when I buy my next property this fall. Same process I'm going to follow along here. in order to get the best deal. Now, if a home has been sitting on the market for a while, this might be an advantage to look at. If it's been on the market, let's say 3 months, you gotta consider, well, why has it been on the market 3 months? The best guess, it's probably either overpriced or it's incorrectly marketed. That might be a decent property to go take a look at. Just because it's forgotten by probably 90% of home buyers are not taking a look at that. They only want to look at the new stuff on the market. So if you take a look at that property, and let's say it's 300, it might not be a bad idea to come in, definitely below that asking price, just to see if that seller is really motivated to sell. Because it's either overpriced, incorrectly marketed, or the seller does not have to sell. They're settling on a set number in their mind that really doesn't exist, unfortunately, that I need this in order to move. So I would take a look at that property and just see if it's something, if it's in decent shape, or go through the inspection, get it under contract, and see if it's something worth your time. Just because a lot of people are going to neglect that property if it's been on the market too long. In contrast, if you do have a new property, and let's say it's a 3-family, and right now in the Worcester area, most of them are in the ballpark of 380 to 420, and some are even going 450. So if there's a property, it's a 3-family in decent shape, and it's priced at 300, that's probably something you want to look at immediately. The condition's probably not going to be as good. It's probably under market, but on that property right there, it would likely make sense to go significantly above that asking price, depending on the condition of the property, just because it's worth way more than that asking price. It's priced in order to get multiple offers in on the property. That would be a smart one to go over ask and not under ask, because you don't want to lose the property based on the deal itself. And number 8, the final one, is after you get the property under contract, after you go through the inspection, after you go through the purchase and sale, there will be an appraisal, and that will determine the value of the home. So if you purchase the home and it's under contract at 300, and the appraisals say it's worth 305, you got yourself a nice little deal, since they determine the value to be higher than your actual under contract price. If you purchase it for 300, but the appraisal says it's worth 295, the bank will not lend on that 300 because they determine the value to be 295. So the issue you have is actually good on the buyer's perspective, because if you can only get a loan for 295, you're gonna have to work with the seller, and likely the seller's gonna have to come down in price at 295 in order for you to get that deal, and you can work it out. It's not your fault, because at the time you thought it was worth 300 and that's where it was under contract, but the appraisal will say, okay, hey, it's 295. So now either the options are the seller can come down to 295 because that's the value of the home and you're only paying on that 295, or you walk away. But I would imagine if the seller has invested time and you're a legit buyer, you have your financing in check, the home inspection went fine, they're likely going to work with you, just because it is more of a pain to go back on the market, look for a new buyer, make sure they have secure financing, and it's not even guaranteed you're going to get more money than when you were on the market and you had that offer under contract. Typically you get less money when you go back on the market from the seller's perspective, which is not ideal. So they got to bite the bullet and likely come to terms with that's what the property's worth, and they're going to work with you on that 295 price, which is would be in your benefit. And hopefully you found it helpful. Don't forget to drop a like, subscribe, and see you in the next vid.